Okay, you are live.
All right. I would like to call the Transparency and Accountability Committee meeting to order. And can I have a motion to approve the November 24th meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. The purpose of this meeting is to bring forth next steps in the form of a recommendation that we will present on our next council meeting on December is it the 7th?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, the 7th. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Shamus. And Shamus, you can go ahead and ramp us up and present that for us.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I did want to make one point, which I think that it's not clear that we're going to actually meet that deadline of December 7th. Just getting all the recommendations from all the groups in position to be approved, we may need a little bit more time. So just making sure to give everyone a heads up. But yeah, I think we just wanted to continue the discussion from last week. I just wanted to briefly say before we go into the document, but that I think it's important that we find recommendations that we can agree with. I think particularly around the auditor's office, I think that's important. One of the things that we've talked about is that there's no defined authority in city law that says what can and can't be accessed. There's no administrative support. There's a lack of resources and staffing, and that that hampers the ability to do oversight and engagement, even though there are significant internal oversight mechanisms. And I went back and as a result of our working group, the Beacon Journal wrote an editorial, and it was titled "Akron's Police Auditor Can't Deliver Transparency Without More Help." And in it, they said, Akron residents still deserve more transparency than what's available today. They need a police auditor who could call out any shortcomings or credibly report strong performances. Both could help police improve the public's confidence in police work. And I think that's what we're all working towards is people have asked us, especially this summer, but over long periods of time, to find ways to help improve community trust in police. And we as legislators have a responsibility to do that. So let me just share my screen here. Can everyone see that?
Yes. I mean,
So I made a couple of changes to the document. I talked with Lieutenant Brown on Friday for a while. I appreciate the willingness to talk on a holiday. And so I'll just go through these briefly, and then we can talk, amongst the three of us, if that works.
Okay.
Here, as Lieutenant Brown pointed out, the correct thing is a shift commander or a captain as opposed to shift supervisor. So that was a very easy change to make here on who gets the IA Pro Blue Team reports when a threshold is hit. When we talk about use of force incidents, Lieutenant Brown suggested that we make a definition here for reportable use of force, because it is, it doesn't necessarily include, any time an officer touches somebody, but the definition is here in the footnote, and that's from the APD policy, and it is very broad, so it does include, a lot of, significant things, and then there are some like catch-all provisions that, anytime force results in physical injury or anytime the suspect complains of physical injury. So I think that would help there. So I appreciate that. And then also Lieutenant Brown, mentioned last week that the discipline process is governed by the APD rules and regulations. And there are some provisions in the collective bargaining agreement. So I put that in there. Here, when we talk about the 2-year issue with minor disciplines that are not treated as second offenses, if it's a violation of the same rule after 2 years, I went in and put in the sort of the counter argument that Lieutenant Brown made about, why we might want that kind of threshold. So I put that in there. And here, with regard to, some of the use of force and settlements, I put in that, a significant amount of the settlements paid were for one single incident. One of the things Lieutenant Brown and I discussed is that other cities, particularly we both looked at Cleveland, and Cleveland has had, I think it's around $30 million in settlements or court cases, judgments over the last several decades that it has had to pay out. And so, I think it's important that, we haven't been able to give that issue full study, but I think it's important to note that that does deserve a lot of context, because when we ultimately compare Akron to other communities, Akron maybe may have a less of a significant issue with regard to settlements or use of deadly force, but we want to clarify that that's not something that we primarily focus on here, so we don't want to certainly make any conclusions. See here, I made a couple of changes with regard to the police auditor, just to kind of specify that I think from what we've discussed, the premier challenge, the primary issue with the auditor's office is the lack of any written policy or legislation defining what can and can't be accessed. Not necessarily that APD isn't willing to give stuff, but that it's just unclear what the authority to access stuff is. And I think that is the primary issue when it comes to IA Pro or evidence.com or other things. And then here, I know that, a lot of these things were, things that I wrote based on our committee discussions, but I tried to soften the language a little bit to, instead of saying the auditor's office should have 3 people, to say that, it would be more effective with 3 people, to show that, if we approve these recommendations, they're the beginning of a conversation. And we're not saying that it has to have 3 people, or we're not saying that it has to report to a board of citizens, but that from what we've heard from NACOL and from other folks, that does seem to be a best practice. So I tried to do that. So I guess, would love to hear what, the other members think of this, and, maybe we could talk about where to go from here.
Okay.
Thanks, Shama.
So are there,
Okay, sorry.
no, go ahead. Did you want to close it off to just us 3, or are there any comments or any feedback or conversation that the lieutenants want to have in regards to what Shama's just read before we close it off to just the committee?
Yeah, briefly, the document there about the Jeremy Stevens settlement, it may want to be made clear that the use of deadly force by officers was justified, and there was no wrongdoing on the part of Akron police officers. And mainly, I think that settlement was made to avoid more costly litigation. I don't know if that wants to be made clear, but yeah, we didn't do anything wrong in that situation. I think that was more or less, minimizing the amount of further litigation would cause. I don't want to speak on behalf of the law department. That's my impression of why that is. But yeah, no officers were found to have any, done any wrongdoing in that particular incident. And I would hate for this document to kind of maybe somehow be taken. Somebody reading it might take the implication that they were wrong in that regard. So that's the only point I had. Thanks to you, or thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The other-
Shamus, I have a question.
Sure.
Well, first of all, Lieutenant Brown mentions that, he doesn't believe Mr. Young has ever been denied any information that he has requested. Okay. So in regards to Mr. Young, if there were additional staff, that he would receive, I mean, who would pay for that? I assume he's the police auditor, so that he's employed by the city of Akron, and it comes out of the police budget. So any staff would come out of that budget too. So, I don't want to, I mean, if he needs help, he needs help, but to take away from, the police budget, we need all the money we can give them, I believe, to do their job. Whether it's.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I believe his budget does come under the mayor's office in our city budget presentation. But obviously, money is money. So if there was additional staff, that would cost, it would be city funds. So I totally take your point. I do think it's justified. I think going back when Phil first started in that role in, I believe it was 2007, he was at 40 hours a week and had an administrative assistant. And I believe it was 2009 when the recession hit and, there were a lot of buyouts that the administrative assistant was removed, and then he was downgraded to 20 hours a week and was then up to 30 hours a week only in March of this year. And so, I think that having an administrative assistant isn't too much to ask. And, someone, and also, when we look at other jurisdictions, I think it would make sense to have a deputy or someone who can kind of be an additional form of support. And also, at some point the auditor is going to retire and
right.
we're going to need a new auditor. And it would help if there was someone who, like we have a deputy mayor for labor relations, and then we
right.
have the assistant, Mr. Williams. So that's sort of my impression there. And then I guess the final point is, I know that Lieutenant Brown, put that in the comments, and I guess, in talking to Phil, and even in his conversations with our group, I think he would argue that he hasn't had access to all the things he has wanted. I know he's specifically asked for access to IA Pro. I know that there are issues with having access to body-worn cameras. And I know that he often asks the Patrol Bureau to look at those body-worn cameras, but being able to go through a redaction process that might take several weeks or a month is different than having access to evidence.com. And if there's a workaround that we can do now, that's great. But there's a question of why that isn't something that we could do in the past. I know that now new complaints are being shared with him, which is great, but that wasn't the case previously. So I do think it's the case that that there's more information that could be provided.
Right.
So.
Okay. Well, I agree that, with the theory of how the city's staff is set up with, mayor, deputy mayor, or, clerk of council, deputy clerk of council. I get all that because you're right. He is going to retire someday. But I guess I would want to know from the Akron Police Department, are they waiting on some work provided by Phil Young? Does he have a backlog of things that he needs to, give to them or report to them? Because I guess I would go with an additional staff like he used to have, but I don't think I would go with 3. I would go with 1. That would be my opinion on that. So that's what I wanted to say in regard to that recommendation. I don't know if we were going to talk about the second recommendation yet, or just we're going to do it recommendation by recommendation here, or what?
First of all, what I'd like to do is offer Lieutenant Kapler a chance to chime in if he would like. And then we're going to, kind of like close it off to the three of us to discuss how we're going to lay this out and make our recommendations to the body, if that's okay. Lieutenant Kapler, is there something you'd like to add to the conversation or?
Yeah,
Are you-
I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to have some things spelled out as to what Phil Young's actual role is. It's not defined. So I think Councilman Malik's right to have that defined as to exactly what is his role, what is it in relation to the Akron Police Department, so that the waters aren't muddied. I think that's a good thing, but I think it also is something that we should come up with collectively as well, and figure out what works best for not only Phil Young and the police department, but the community as well. And when the roles are defined, you don't have that air of questions out there, and everything's set into place.
Thank you. Thank you for your feedback.
Madam Chair,
Okay.
I'm not sure if you can see Councilwoman Amobian has her hand raised.
Okay, Councilwoman Amobian, go ahead. Thanks for joining us. Go ahead.
Councilman, you're on mute.
Thank you for allowing me to participate in this discussion. I certainly appreciate the work that's been done. I've always wanted to figure out exactly what the citizens intended when we were really pushing for an independent auditor. And I'm sure it was never meant to be an adversarial position with the police, but it could be a win-win for both sides. It could be a person who will openly disclose to the public what actually happened. And we know that we have good and excellent police officers and a very good police force. And it could also find areas that we need to strengthen and improve on. One of the things we learned a long time ago, and I was around when he had a part-time administrative assistant or whatever it was, there's just no way one person can do the job that needs to be done. So if there is a way to hire or have part-time staff or individuals available as needed or whatever the case may be, and I realize we're talking about a budgetary issue, but I think this position needs to be strengthened and seen as a position of some importance, because that's the way it was always intended. Whenever there were any kind of issues of force, issues where the public had some concerns about what happened, this person would step in and look at all the evidence and facts and then present it to the public so that everybody could see it. And again, it was to, I think, just make it a transparent investigation of what they found or what he found, and then present it. And then we decide what needs to be done. Was the force necessary? Was it commensurate with the actions that were, the infractions that occurred? Are there areas that we need to improve upon? But again, it's hard for one person to do the investigation, because sometimes you need to bounce things off someone. And if you have someone else in the office with you, that'd be helpful as well. Some people wanted an oversight committee of citizens. That's not a bad idea, but I don't know if we're there yet as a community. But I don't think we ever wanted to have an adversarial relationship with the police department either. But it needs to be independent of both sides. So this person can present the facts and lay things out and do a thorough job, and whatever that may cost. We're not talking about unlimited dollars, but you may need to spend some money to have some staff available to assist, and a way to present this. So those are my thoughts at the moment. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your insight. Okay, so is there any other questions or concerns or any other ideas that anyone would like to speak it in terms of regarding a conversation?
Could I, Madam Chair?
Yes, you may.
So if I can just pull this up, I have the budget data for the auditor's office. And one moment. And so this is 2020, but Shelley Goodrich, our wonderful deputy finance director, was able to share the previous years as well. And, you know, what we're talking about is $37,000 in salary, $26,000 in $27,000 in benefits, and ultimately, you know, $73,000. If we had a deputy auditor and that was, you know, someone a couple of years out of law school, you know, or someone who has spent a couple of years as an officer, you know, that could be $45,000, $50,000. We could have an administrative assistant, you know, part-time shared with another office, or, you know, full-time for less than that. We're not talking about an awful lot of money, you know. Certainly money is money and we have to be cognizant of it. But, you know, and when I said 3 people, I didn't mean 3 additional people. I meant Mr. Young, a deputy, and some form of, you know, staff who could be administrative support, but it could also help with the community engagement. Because I agree with Councilwoman Amobian that, you know, the role, as again, it's not a defined role. So I think part of this is helping define it. But I think the role as we could envision it, as we could reimagine it, is to, you know, be a bridge between the police and the community. And certainly there are things that if Phil would have access to, if that office would have access to, it can't share with the public, you know, certain, you know, details and personnel things and that kind of thing. But absolutely, he could be a way of taking all of this information that we've been talking about, that all the groups have been talking about, and spreading that with the community. And I think building that trust.
All right, thank you. So do we want to close the meeting to just the 3 of us? Or are we going to keep the meeting open while we bring forth our ideas of next steps?
I just want to talk. This is Phil. I just want to talk a little bit more on the other recommendations with the, you know, Akron Police on the call here.
Okay, go ahead. Oops.
Oh, Shamus. Okay. So
yeah.
on number 2, when we're talking about, you know, information being publicly available online, I would just like to ask, I don't know if Lieutenant Brown or Sergeant Capel or anybody knows, is there many, like, all this information is posted on your website, the Akron Police website. Is there a lot of hits on that? I mean, are people craving for this information?
No, I don't know if we get a lot of hits in that regard. You know, that's I don't think I know of there's a ready, you know, a counter ready, but you know, to be put it out there and here's what we do and what we're all about. We've put out as much you know, about as much information I think as we can there, with all of our policies and everything else. So I don't know what the public consumption of that website is at all.
Okay.
Maybe it'll be better after these meetings.
Because I just didn't, you know, again, to make an analogy of what City Council was talking about previously, as far as giving citizens a budget tool to look at the city's budget. I don't know if there's many people out there craving for that information. And if they did find something, you know, I have air quotes, I don't know if you could see me, but if they did find something, then what firestorm would that set off? You know, like if we're wanting to give the citizens a deeper understanding of whatever a use of force issue, what would they do? I mean, what kind of firestorm would that set off? I guess that's where I'm going with this.
Okay.
Can I respond to that, Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Shamus.
I mean, I know this is something that we talked about last week as well, but I mean, I think what we have to acknowledge is that, you know, part of this process came out of hundreds and probably thousands of people who were, you know, protesting, who were having conversations and gatherings and meetings, and not just around the country, but here in Akron. And I mean, I think that there are certainly a lot of people in the community, especially people in the African American community, who have concerns with law enforcement and concerns with our local law enforcement. And we have to do everything we can, I think, as council and as, you know, the city government, to try to bridge those divides that exist for historical reasons, divides that exist because of lack of information, what have you. And so I am a little bit troubled by that line of thinking that's like we should be afraid of what people are going to find out. I think in most cases people would be impressed with what they find out, but if there are concerns, and certainly there have been concerns over the years, we should welcome that scrutiny, and we should all welcome that scrutiny, not just, you know, the police department, but us as council members, the whole city government. You know, people don't trust government generally, and we should, you know, we should have more transparency at every level, and that's, I feel very strongly about that.
Yeah, I don't think the Akron police have anything to hide. I mean, they've put out this, you know, PDF with crime and police statistics, but I think some of the information is classified because, you know, we're not in their world as far as how they investigate things. So how much information would we be, you know, giving out? And, you know, again, if whatever the public found something, I mean, what's that going to do with, you know,
Phil, if I could just interject for a minute, I think
Mhm.
that, you know, that is a bit premature right now, because what we're trying to establish, there's no basis or guidelines or policy or legislation to even say anything, you know, as far as what the auditor is supposed to do as far as his job role and how he interacts with the APD. There's nothing that's they can put their hands on that would even indicate anything like that. So that's kind of the basis of, or the groundwork that has to be laid first in order to do that. And Lieutenant Kapler was saying, you know, he would like the two sides to work together on that. And certainly Shamus did indicate that if there were things that the public should not know or cannot know for various reasons, then they would not know that. It would have to be communicated in a different manner without disclosing things that they're not privy to. So, you know, this is not to just exploit any entity or anything like this. This is just to set up a structure whereby everybody can abide by and get fair treatment on both sides. So, you know, while addressing the community. So, you know, you can kind of hold on to that a little bit. It's a little premature. We got to do the basic stuff first, and then we can springboard from there once something comes up that needs to be dealt with, you know, in that area.
Madam Chair, this is Linda Mobian. May I say
Okay,
something?
go ahead, Linda.
The only reason I really want to speak is that I think we have to remember that the independent auditor came about because of the need for transparency, for the need for public information to be made aware of what actually took place. So I think we have to remember that. And I think Councilman Sharma's in the last paragraph or last statements in recommendation 2, it is critical to us continuing to have this position, because that is what we want to do. We want to make sure that people have all of the information. People don't know what they don't know. And a lot of times it's not that everybody's going to the website, because like I know, you may only be interested in the case that you're interested in. And it may not be every case, but it may just be one that you want to know everything that you can about it. There are some legal things that probably won't be revealed initially, but most of this work is public information. And keep that in mind. Just like mostly everything we do on council is public information, because we're spending public dollars and we're using public resources. So everything belongs to the citizens of Akron. And when they ask questions, they should be able to get answers. And anytime you hide something, or anytime you refuse to reveal something, people become suspicious and suspect that you're hiding something, when in fact, we want this independent auditor to make his findings available to the public so they can see for themselves, once he has investigated an issue of force, that here are the facts. This is what happened. Either they agree with what happened, or there could be room and opportunities for improvement, education, training, or whatever the case may be. But we don't want to get into the place of trying to select for the public as to what we share with them. Because at the end of the day, most of the information that we have downtown is open to the public and can be gotten by the public. They may have a hard time getting it, but ultimately that information is available to the public. And I don't want us to try to distill or, filter stuff for people. They should be able to read and see what they want to see when they want to see it. That's all I have to say, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. When I'm talking in regards to, like, if there's an ongoing investigation, some things that may not be disclosed right away about that to the public because it could interfere. But there's certainly transparency is, as much as can be, should be. But we need to, like I said, we need to, to determine the fundamentals, the legislation and policies that govern our auditor's position. And some of the other things that were mentioned in the information that Shamus shared. Shamus, do you want to go ahead and revisit that?
Sure. I mean, just, going back up here to recommendation 1, I think what I'm trying to encapsulate here is just that we should enact legislation that clearly establishes this office and what it does, and make sure that it has the staffing and funding and independence from the political process to do its work and to be trusted by the community. I mean, that's its job. Is the OPSA has a role as the internal check on the police department, and they do that job. And we've also heard from other folks how having an external source of oversight, someone else looking over the shoulder, helps too. And like Councilwoman Baylor said, like Councilwoman Amobian said, this is public records that we're talking about. We're not talking about current investigation materials. We're not talking about personnel protected information. We're talking about stuff that the public can get with a public records request anyways. So that's why I think these 3 brackets are kind of things we've heard about, things that are necessary. It isn't saying this is what the legislation would be. It's like what the charter amendment that we passed last month, or I guess it's December. So yeah, last month. It would say this is what we should do. Council should work with police department, with the auditor's office, with the community, with the mayor's task force to figure out exactly what that would mean. I mean, we should all be very honest about what's going on, which is it's 2007 that he started. It's 2020, and we don't have a defined set of rules for what how this office should function. how, I mean, that's honestly troubling, and we all have a responsibility, I think, as council to work on that. So I think, I don't think it's a huge ask. I don't think we have to say that this would definitely report to a community board, or that it definitely would have to have 3 people or 5 people or 1 person. I don't think there's an office in the city that couldn't use 1 extra staff member, but
Right.
I think this is one where, when we saw so much public commentary and energy around this issue, it's worth maybe investing an extra $75,000. We can find that $75,000 to get a deputy and a part-time administrative assistant. But again, this would just be the 3 of us saying, "Hey, council, this is what we should start working towards."
Okay. So do we want to bring that to a vote? Do you want to make a motion?
Sure. I make a motion that we, accept this recommendation as it's written.
Do I hear a second?
I want to, I don't know if I'm on, no, I'm not on mute. Okay.
Did you hear that?
I
Phil?
want to, I just want to look at that one more time and talk about it with us 3. I agree, Shamus, with what you said just, recently. We're not maybe defining, a certain number of people for, his or her staff, but I just want to be able to read that clearly, maybe without all the red marks in there, like how we're going to exactly recommend that. So that's, I don't know if we could have, time and talk about it tomorrow, or, whatever we're going to do here, but I just want to talk about it with us 3.
Okay. So
Just
There-
a
I
point
mean,
of clarification. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Sarah.
go
I was
ahead,
gonna say,
Sarah.
just a point of clarification that it does need to be an open meeting. Anytime that this working group is meeting, it does need to be live on YouTube to meet
That's
the
fine.
open meetings requirement.
That's
Okay,
fine.
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, here's the language without, any red lines. If there are specific parts that we should talk about, we should talk about it. But I do think we've had this for over a week. I think we should, try to work towards a decision tonight, I think, because, we, at this rate, we're not already going to hit this December 7th goal. And, we do want to go ahead, but anyways, I'm happy to talk.
I agree. I would like to go ahead with it as well. We need to start getting, another meeting is just I mean, to regurgitate the same information. I just think that pretty much nothing's really going to change right here, because we got to get started at some point with our next steps. And these are the next steps that we've all come up with throughout this conversation, or our meetings and all that. So I don't see where
As
another
long as we're
meeting-
not coming up with a specific number, I agree that, he needs help. But as long as we're not coming up with a specific number, then that, if council needed to just decide on that, or however, we come to the table on, working with the police department on, getting help for the auditor, as long as it's not a specific number, then I'm fine with that. I mean, I agree, like you said, at the end of the day, all the records are public. So that's fine.
Phil, I was just going to say that, here, I did try to, I changed it from, like, the auditor's office should have 3 positions, so it would be much more effective with 3 positions. I wanted to be clear that I don't think that we're telling council it has to be 3 positions. If we'd like to change this to, you know, I think it's true that it would be much more effective with three positions. I don't think anyone
Well,
can argue with that. But
yeah, like you said, anybody could use more help in the office, but from going from 1 to 3 or 1 to 4, right? Right?
3.
Oh, total of 3?
The way it says the auditor's office would be much more effective with 3 positions: the auditor, a deputy auditor or investigator, and an administrative / communications assistant to help with office management and community engagement. I mean, we can put anything else in there. It doesn't say they have to be full-time. It doesn't say they have to be part-time. It doesn't ultimately say it has to be 3. But
Okay.
I mean, I think that, he
Okay.
used to have 2 people. And this is only becoming a more important issue, right? Community trust in policing is not becoming a
Right.
less important issue than it was in 2007. So,
Yeah, I almost read that as a total of 4, but if it's a total of 3, then I would agree with that, because I just agree that he's going to retire someday and there's nobody, a deputy auditor, and then like the administrative help, if I can't tie any dollars to it, like you were using the figure of an extra 75,000, but I can't, we're not committing to that. We're just saying that he needs a deputy auditor and an administrative assistant. I would go with that if the city, we can ultimately afford that in the budget.
Yeah, it may not come from that. It could come from somewhere else, a grant, anything. You never know. I mean, there's other options that could be explored when it comes to this. We're not, so we just have to do our due diligence and see what we can do to make things more feasible and more realistic. So with that,
Okay.
I'm going to ask for another motion.
I'll make the motion to, well, would it make sense if we just talk about the second one and then we just move to
Yes.
approve the whole document?
Right.
Yes.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so here's the second one. Again, I think what I tried to do with the wording here, I don't even know if this needs to be legislation. I think this can be more of an ongoing conversation. We're not going to be rid of each other. We're all going to continue to be friends after this. But about the ways in which we can put more information online, right? I think that the policies and procedures were put online this year, and that was a huge win. I know that the OPSA manual was put online this year, and that's a huge win in terms of transparency. And I really think that, what we've heard about the citizen contact log, what we've heard about, the way that IA Pro and the body worn camera, I mean, the way these things need to be, we need to be able to talk about these more, and we need to be able to point to citizens and say, hey, look, like, this stuff, in many ways it exonerates officers from claims of wrongdoing, right? There are times when we can use these tools to learn about ways that things should have been done differently, certainly, but there's often times when it helps show that officers are doing their best with difficult jobs. So to me, this one is the kind of let's continue working together piece. So
But
that's
this one doesn't have to be any legislation, like you said.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I would agree with that.
Okay, well, go ahead.
No, just like you said, just to continue to work together, and all information that's available for the public. We're not going to release anything that's going to incriminate anybody. It's just a matter of this is what we're allowed to discuss, and that's open and free for anybody to see. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, we're bound by the Ohio Public Records laws. Anything that is prohibited from being disclosed cannot be disclosed.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that's certainly very clear. And That's very important. And, we do want to make sure that, I think one of the things that I think we heard in some of the discussions is oftentimes when there is issues with the external oversight, it's because it's not clear what, is being shared with the public. And I think that's a very real concern, is that, what should be shared with the public, it should be clearly defined. And we don't want any issue where it's like, the auditor is sharing something that really they need to go through the public records process for. So, yeah.
Okay.
So the other point, I did want to go back to what Lieutenant Brown said. I understand that we don't want to, raise the inference that was unjustified. At the same time, since it was a settlement, I don't want to say that, that it was conclusively deemed by the court system to be justified. So I think it's probably best if we just take that parenthetical out, since we didn't delve into those issues very deeply with regard to deadly force. So if everyone's okay with that.
I agree.
But with that, I would make a motion that we, accept this document as the, summary and findings of our working group.
Do I have a second?
I second that.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Is there anything else that anyone have for the good of the order?
I know we've said this a couple of times, but I think we obviously want to thank our APD liaisons for working with us, for providing an awful lot of information.
Yes.
I know we want to thank Sarah for her work. Thank the other council members who've joined in. I know that a number of them have over the course of the time. So I hope this is the start of conversations. I hope that we continue having these conversations.
Absolutely.
Because we have a police department that in so many ways we can be proud of. And like any department, there are things that we can work on, just like there are ways that we can work on our own roles as council and improve people's trust in all forms of government. So that I just want to express all that appreciation from my perspective.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you guys for your work, and lieutenants and sergeant, the sergeant that's not here. Is he here?
Yeah, Sergeant Spanish is here. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hi, Sergeant. I'll learn you guys after a while. But thank you all for your participation and your willingness to work with us on these issues. And thank you for all your hard work, Shamus, the research and the legal aspect of all this that you have brought to our, to us as well. You've done quite a lot of work as well. So with that, until we meet again, we will notify our lieutenants and our sergeant when our next meeting will convene, maybe on the other side of the year, maybe in January, or whenever it is. We'll let you guys know. So in the meantime, happy holidays to you. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and thanks again.
Thank you.
This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.